Good afternoon, everybody. This is Mike Brennan here at the National Hurricane Center. It's just after 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, August 6th, coming on this afternoon with the latest on Tropical Storm Debby, which is still causing dangerous flooding across portions of southeastern Georgia, much of coastal South Carolina, as the system is moving very, very slowly now off to the east-northeast at only about 3 miles per hour. You can see the center of the large circulation centered here just to the east of Savannah, near the border of South Carolina and Georgia, right along the immediate Atlantic coast. And you can see the broad flow around Debby, bringing that tropical moisture, creating that heavy rainfall across portions of Georgia, South Carolina, now expanding up into North Carolina. And if we look at the radar loop, we can see those rain bands bringing that heavy rainfall. We've seen rainfall totals over 10 inches in portions of Georgia and South Carolina. Seen some substantial flooding, some rescues, some homes and businesses being inundated, which is unfortunately what we're going to continue to expect to see over the next couple of days. And that flooding threat is going to continue, especially in coastal portions of South Carolina, and transition up into southeastern North Carolina over the next couple of days as these heavy rain bands continue to bring that heavy rainfall into those areas. So let's take a look at the latest forecast. So as I just mentioned, Debby is now moving just very slowly to the east-northeast at about 3 miles per hour. And unfortunately, that slow forward speed is going to continue for the next 24 to 36 hours, which is going to result in the center of Debby just meandering here off the coast of South Carolina all the way into Thursday. So we've got all day Wednesday. Debby's not going to move more than about 40 or 50 miles, still be sitting here off the South Carolina coast, and then start to move more slowly northward as we go from Wednesday night into Thursday, Thursday into Friday, bringing the center of Debby across South Carolina and then North Carolina, and then the remnants of the system as it loses its tropical characteristics up into northern Virginia on Friday. And beyond that time, we're going to see more of an acceleration toward the northeast that will take Debby and its remnants up through the northeastern United States from Friday into Saturday and on up into Atlantic Canada Saturday into Sunday. So what we're going to see over the next few days play out is an expanding rainfall threat for rainfall and flooding from the Carolinas up into the mid-Atlantic states and eventually into the Northeast. So let's take a look at that broad-scale rainfall forecast over the next several days. In the short term, over the next 2 to 3 days, we're still expecting to see storm total rainfall amounts of 10 to 20 inches across portions of coastal South Carolina up into southeastern North Carolina, where we could see isolated totals as high as 25 inches, causing widespread flooding impacts, potentially catastrophic flooding in localized areas. Then as Debby starts to move farther north, we're going to see rainfall totals of up to 6 inches over widespread areas from upstate South Carolina through portions of North Carolina, western Virginia, up into the mid-Atlantic and northeast states. In these regions, we could see areas that seeing isolated totals as high as 8 inches. And that's especially concerning once you get up into the higher elevations here along the Appalachian Mountains and up into the northeastern United States. That could cause considerable flash flooding impacts, river flooding impacts as we go through the next several days. That broad risk of flooding we see first is focused here in this bright pink area. That's that level 4 out of 4 risk for flash flooding that includes areas like Charleston, Florence, South Carolina, Wilmington, Fayetteville, Raleigh, North Carolina, with a moderate risk surrounding that, including metro areas like Charlotte, Columbia, Augusta. And then our focus is going to shift up into the northeastern United States with that moderate risk, and that's going to exist as we go into the weekend in places like upstate New York, up into northern New England, places like Vermont that have seen some pretty substantial flooding several times during the past few weeks. So really the risk is going to shift northward with time. So let's take a look. Right now we have flood watches over much of the southeastern coast of the United States, from southeast Georgia, much of central and eastern South Carolina, central and eastern North Carolina, and all the way up into central and eastern Virginia. These flood watches will continue to expand northward with time. So let's focus in on the areas that we're most concerned about from now through Wednesday morning. We're worried about this area from Statesboro, Georgia, up to Charleston, Myrtle Beach, Wilmington. And on Wednesday into Thursday, that's going to focus is going to be still in that same area, because remember, Debby is going to continue to just sit here off the South Carolina coast. So those big rain bands to the north of the center are going to continue to produce that heavy rainfall here focused in coastal South Carolina, southeastern North Carolina. Then as we move from Thursday into Friday, that risk of the worst risk of flash flooding starts to shift northward up into portions of central North Carolina, with a moderate risk now extending up into portions of south central Virginia. And then as we saw, that risk is going to spread northward as we go later into the week and through the weekend. So again, let's remind everybody, what are the kinds of impacts you're going to see when you are going to have 15 to 25 inches of rain? These are areas of coastal South Carolina, southeastern North Carolina. Over the next couple of days, you're going to see flooding of homes and businesses. You're going to have flooding that's going to prompt evacuations and rescues. Flooding is going to cut off transportation. It's going to make it really difficult to move around. You could have closures of major highways, interstates, and roads may erode from underneath due to the flooding, making them unsafe to drive on. So it's especially important as we go into the nighttime hours. You don't want to be out driving in flooded areas. Many of our flooding fatalities occur in vehicles, and you don't want to be out driving. So follow advice you're given by your local officials to stay off the roads and follow any orders for curfews that are given. And then finally, you're going to see flooding in places that don't normally flood. And the flooding could last a long time, especially along main stem rivers, which take a long time to go up, but then may take days or weeks to come down, prolonging that flooding in some areas. Now, we are expecting Debby to re-intensify after its center moves out over the warm waters of the Atlantic coastline here. We're expecting the peak winds to get back up into the 55 to 60 mile per hour range before the storm makes its final landfall on Thursday. So we still have that tropical storm warning in effect for the coast of South Carolina, extreme southeastern North Carolina with a tropical storm watch up towards the Crystal Coast, Atlantic Beach, Beaufort, Morehead City area. We're most concerned about those tropical storm conditions for a long duration potentially as Debby begins to move back towards the coast during the day on Thursday along the South Carolina coast and southeastern North Carolina. And a reminder that with the saturated soils, those strong winds, it will be easier for them to knock down trees, cause power outages, and create unsafe conditions there. In terms of storm surge, we still have a storm surge watch in effect from South Santee River, South Carolina, up to Cape Fear, North Carolina. When Debby does go on and make its final landfall, areas just to the right and near the center of where that crosses the coast could experience up to 2 to 4 feet of inundation above ground level, especially if the surge occurs at the time of high tide. And that could create, again, additional flooding problems in places that are already going to see those extreme rainfall amounts. So let's just wrap up again with the key points for Tropical Storm Debby this afternoon. Potentially historic heavy rainfall across eastern South Carolina through Friday will likely result in areas of catastrophic flooding. And then we're going to see that flooding risk and considerable flooding impacts expand into central and upstate portions of South Carolina, portions of North Carolina, Virginia, up into the mid-Atlantic states, western and northern New York state, and then up into northern New England Friday into Saturday. Tropical storm conditions will spread northward along the southeast U.S. coast where we have those tropical storm watches and warnings in effect, and we could still see that dangerous storm surge materialize along the coast of South Carolina as Debby makes its final landfall on Thursday. So again, stay tuned for more updates here at hurricanes.gov at the National Hurricane Center. Find more information from your local National Weather Service office at weather.gov. We'll be back with you later on throughout the event here covering Debby. So thanks for joining us. I'm Mike Brennan at the National Hurricane Center.